noticing a pattern amongst all the people that I support in my recovery effort. And that is that a lot of the sources of relapse come exclusively through social engagement. Let's talk about that. Stay tuned. So I've noticed that many of the people who I work with, my sponsees, there seems to be this reoccurring pattern that engagement through social media, whether you're using Twitter, Kick, Discord, you name it, Instagram, even dating apps, right? Through all of these processes, I've noticed that there's this pattern where people are engaging more and more with other social groups in order to consume content, right? And perhaps early on in the internet, it was a little bit more simplistic. Like you had to go out and search and, basically go hunt and kill the things that you wanted. But nowadays, just simply being part of a social group can provide endless amounts of content. And through this process, we start to merge our consumption habits with actual socialization. So it's a dangerous combination because not only is this feeding you the thing that you want for your addiction, but it's also in a way kind of programming you. I like to call it the Hivemind, and certainly it's called that out in the internet as well. Certainly the hive mind can do a lot of things. It can centralize a lot of common thought, so that topic matter could include things such as, pop culture, influence on political ideology, morality. Some of those things can be good. Some of those things can be terribly bad. Certainly for recovery purposes, I hope that everybody who's listening to this can reach out to a recovery group. Being part of a recovery group can be a fantastic experience. But likewise, simply being inside of a social group can also be the thing that feeds your habit, right? It could also feed the thought process that drives a lot of the triggering events that we have to deal with. Certainly, how we even think on a day-to-day basis by sex. You can enter a social group and be thinking one way about sexuality, and simply by being in the presence of that social group, think a completely different way about human sexuality. Like it literally programs you. So what I've been telling a lot of these people that I've been working with is that you have to let go, man. You have to let go of your social groups. And that also means concurrently that sometimes you have to make hard choices about whether or not you even use certain applications or services. A lot of these platforms, man, they will feed you endlessly. And you've probably seen my battles that I've had with Twitter. And my battles are dealing with how they do censoring. But having worked with a lot of the men who are struggling out there and seeing firsthand how that algorithm will bait them, why put yourself through that effort, right? I can give you a lot of different tactics on how you can use the algorithm to your advantage when you're dealing with some of these social media services. But if they're not going to really try to filter out pornography, and I mean, not saying, passively out of one side of their mouth, oh yeah, we're working on it, but actively trying to suppress pornographic content. If you're putting yourself into a service like that and they're not doing that for you, then you're just in a trigger fest. Hate to say it. Why put yourself in that position? If you're in recovery and you're trying to stay sober, stay out of those places. Literally, stay out of those places. Don't put yourself in a place where you're going to have your recovery jeopardized. And that sometimes means making really hard choices. And some of those hard choices may be, don't use Twitter, don't use Twitch, don't use Kick, don't use Reddit. Make the hard decision and say to yourself, this is not a good place for me. Every time I go out here, I seem to be consuming content that's not good for me. And I seem to be putting myself in a position where I'm constantly going after the threads and the content that I shouldn't be consuming. Be honest with yourself. If you can be honest with yourself and objectively say, yeah, this is a bad place for me, stay away from it. Like, stay away from that content. Do everything you possibly can to get yourself out of those areas so that you're not going to be triggered anymore. Avoid the hive mind. And sometimes it's going to be difficult. I've even seen firsthand where, people will have a phone in their hand and they'll just be randomly clicking on applications. And if you stop to ask them, it's like, hey, why are you doing that? The response will be, I don't know. Or I'm bored, right? So they'll come up with some lame excuse. But the reality is that you've programmed your brain to be sitting there doing that manual clicking, right? And now it's just almost impossible to stop. That in and of itself is an addiction in its own right. But, observe the fact that you're putting yourself into that position, that you've actively allowed yourself to be a consumer of content. Get out of it, man. Break from the hive mind. Do everything you possibly can to get away from the things that are going to put you in a bad position with your recovery. My name is Road to Recovery. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do like this, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me spread the message. I do not make any money for the things that I do here. Everything I do here on this channel is part of my own 12th step, that is giving back to the addict who still suffers. I thank you for listening. Stay on that road to recovery.